Okay, I'm Michael Steinman. This is Jazz Lives. I have the immense good fortune of having the British saxophonist, clarinetist, flautist, composer, educated, and all-around nice person, Alex Clarke, who's come uptown for a visit. And I promised Alex we wouldn't ask any of the questions that have already been asked. So I'll throw it to you, Alex. What should people ask you that they never do?
Oh, that's a really good question. First off, I suppose talking about how I feel when I'm on a gig and sort of the psychological aspect of playing that isn't necessarily the notes. You know, we all have good days and bad days, and how we kind of tackle those and overcome those.
How do you? Do you have a routine? Do you have things that you do to make yourself feel comfortable if the environment isn't comfortable?
I suppose it's a lot of it is just a mindset thing, and trying to I suppose if I've had what I consider to be a bad gig, and I record a lot of my gigs just for my own listening. I think it's important to listen back and to kind of be objective about your playing and take the emotion out of it up to a point. So if I've recorded a gig and I've had what I think was a really good gig, like I thought I played well, then I won't listen back to it on the car on the way home because it will sort of spoil my memory of it. However, in a couple of weeks I might listen back and sort of feel cool about it. But I can guarantee that if I listen back to it in the car, excuse me, I'll be disappointed with what I hear. Conversely, if I think I've had a bad gig, I'll always listen back to it in the car because it's never as bad as you think it is.
That's great, because most of the musicians I know who are in any way capable or impressive are incredibly cruel to themselves in terms of self-criticism. Very few people say to me, I really played well on that set, as if it were inappropriate to be able to praise yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're all our worst critics for sure, and it sort of comes with the nature of the music. You know, there's no end goal. I'm never going to wake up one day and be like, right, I'm where I want to be now. You know, there's no ceiling to how much we want to improve as musicians. So I think it's only natural that we always pick faults. And yeah, I think recording things and listening back to them and listening as though I was listening to a CD that I enjoy, rather than thinking, oh, I played that, I hate that. Instead, try and focus on the good bits, and then also give yourself some constructive criticism rather than just like ripping into your playing and being like, that was dreadful. Instead, kind of think, well, I didn't necessarily like what I did there, maybe I need to work on this, and then take it to the practice room.
Yeah, rather than you're doing that thing you always do.
Yeah. So. And undoubtedly there's nights where you feel like there's less creativity within you, and that might be to do with, you know, what's gone on during the day, you know, whether you've gone through a busy period where you're sort of drifting from one gig to another and you think you're kind of just coasting. We all go through periods of that, but still to kind of show up to the gig and try and put all that to one side and just play as you would.
I think it's interesting because you've been professionally playing for a number of years, right?
Yeah, I started when I was quite young and kind of got thrown into it.
So you have, I would imagine, a reservoir of things, a reservoir of technique, of skill, so that when you come on a gig, it's a question of how high above that level would I be playing? Is that a reasonable characterization?
Definitely. I mean, because of the nature of how I got into music, and I essentially got into it by going out and sitting in with local bands, and I learned all the conventions of following form and hearing changes and all that sort of thing. I learnt it on the bandstand. I think now, ever since, I've almost been trying to catch up technique-wise. Like, you know, I hear things that I want to play, and then often I'm limited by my technique on the sax. So now in terms of what I'm practicing, I'm now going back and doing all that technique, groundwork, you know, shapes and patterns, all the stuff that I probably should have done 10 years ago, in order to sort of solidify my playing and feel like I'm on top of things.
It's interesting though, because should is such a heavy backpack to have to carry around, and you may be at a point in your playing where your technique is just at the place you want to express yourself now, and it'll be different in 5 years or it'll be different in 10 years. But we were talking before all this started about melody, about conveying a message, something that you do beautifully.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's a massively important thing to me, that sense of melody. I mean, you can have all the licks in the world, but if you're not communicating something and making your audience feel something, then I think you've kind of missed the point, you know.
Do you have a practice regimen?
I really wish I could say yes. No, I don't. In fact, you know what, to be honest, for the past, I'd say 3 years, maybe 2 years since sort of the other side of lockdown, I did a lot of practice during lockdown because I had the time to do so. Then when the world opened again and I got busy again, it kind of sort of fell by the wayside a bit. And then I'd say at the start of this year, I got to the point where I was just feeling disappointed in myself every gig, to be perfectly honest, because I didn't feel like I was doing enough practice, and I felt like I proper sort of stagnated and wasn't pushing myself at all. So this year I've been really hitting practice hard again and trying to do a little bit every day, and you know, that isn't always the case. So I sort of set myself a target of doing half an hour every day, you know, setting an achievable goal, and then inevitably it ends up being a good couple of hours because I really enjoy it. And I didn't want to be too structured about the way that I practice. I think if I set myself too many hard goals, then it almost sort of sucks the creativity and the fun out of the practice. So I might start by, you know, doing one sort of patterns, shapes exercise, and then I'll learn a tune, and then I'll try and implement the exercise over that tune, and then I'll see what happens, and no doubt some other kind of harmonic thing might arise from learning that tune, or I might check out a recording of that tune and then hear a phrase that whoever I'm listening to is playing, and then want to take that down, transcribe it, and I find it sort of just unfolds, and before you know it, the time's gone. And I don't know, I'm of the firm belief that any time I spend on my horn is going to make me better. I'm not going to undo anything by just playing, so I try not to be too harsh on myself about what I need to get done within a practice session. Instead, I just treat it as, hey, I'm playing my horn and hopefully getting better, and this is cool.
I'm interested, and in a most positive way, by your statement that you learned your craft through actually playing on the bandstand. And I think so much of contemporary practice these days is people who decide early on they want to be jazz musicians or singers, and they go to a university that offers a degree in this, and they study there for 4 years, and that's wonderful in its own way, but there's nothing like understanding how the community of music works except on the bandstand.
Yeah, totally. It's got to be kind of a two-pronged approach, I think. You've got to do your groundwork behind the scenes, but then you've also got to get out and play with other people. You know, what is this music? It's music to be played with the community, and it's the coming together of people and interaction, and those things I don't think can be learnt in the practice room. Certainly you can listen and study and appreciate records and stuff, but in order to learn the kind of stagecraft aspect of things, you know, when to take a step back, you know, all the communication, eye contact, all of the other things that aren't playing the instrument, they're really hard to learn unless you do it, and you maybe do the wrong thing, say the wrong thing, and you learn what not to do. And, you know, and they can only come from, and that's an accumulative experience thing as well. And I'm really grateful that I started doing that, you know, when I was 15 or whatever, because then that's the stuff that I no longer have to think or worry about when I'm on stage, and instead I can focus on playing the music.
What was it like being a 15-year-old plus young woman coming to these gigs with your sax and a case? Were people kind to you?
You know what, people were really kind. I think I just spent the whole time feeling really, really cheeky and like I was inconveniencing loads of people. But actually I don't think they felt that I was doing that. I think that actually they quite enjoyed seeing someone come through playing their music who was young and inspired and excited about playing jazz. And yeah, I don't think I had any bad experiences really. I mean, certainly some people were a bit hesitant, like, who is this kid? Why is she getting up? But I think on the whole, everyone was like, yeah, you know, invite her up, give her a tune. And I'm really grateful to all those people, both promoters and musicians, for giving me those chances, because it certainly got me out and about and got me meeting people sort of perhaps before I deserved to, you know.
I don't know. My feeling is you wouldn't have been invited up for a second tune if you weren't showing them something good.
Yeah, I guess. I think that it's a nice opportunity to be given, and I think if I'd sort of got into music through, you know, maybe going straight from having lessons in high school, playing a high school band, to then going straight into a college, I'd have bypassed that important step of meeting those people and doing those things.
It's also, I think, if you watch somebody lead a group or lead a rehearsal or set the direction of a jam session, you learn immediately what not to do and what to do. And those are lessons you can't get taught in a classroom, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, even now I go and see gigs and you can be watching the most phenomenal player in the world, but even sometimes sort of their talk on mic, their way of introducing the rest of the band stuff, it isn't great. And I mean, it doesn't matter because their playing's fantastic, but I think as an overall audience experience, it's a really important thing to have down.
And the funny thing, speaking as an audience member, if you embrace the audience, then the audience comes back for future gigs. If you can't speak to the audience, then they go home and they've heard wonderful music, but they're a little bit puzzled about what's missing.
Yeah, totally. I mean, at the end of the day, we're booked to entertain the audience in front, and it's a fine balance, isn't it, between playing for yourself and your own musical values, playing to gel with the other people on stage, but then also remembering that you've got a load of paying people in front of you and they've come to have a good night out, and you've got to give them that. And I'm not saying abandon your kind of musical integrity in order to please the crowd, but you've got to bear in mind that, you know, you've got to give them what they want to hear up to a point. And, you know, if you're playing to an audience that isn't necessarily a hardcore jazz listening crowd, then you've got to play some more well-known stuff that they might recognise. And you can't, you know, scare them with really heavy-going contemporary stuff because they might not get it. But equally, you've got to broaden their horizons a bit and perhaps play them something that they don't know but you think they might like. So it's all a very careful balancing act.
It sounds like you're already on top of it, or you're learning how to do it better and better each time.
Always learning, absolutely.
Going back to when you were a young blood starting, as if you were an old person now, which I think is funny, was it still an all-male world, or were there women instrumentalists on the bandstand in the UK?
Very male-dominated, I'm not going to lie. I think particularly because when I first started playing, I was playing a lot of traditional jazz and New Orleans music, and that scene, certainly in the UK, is very much a sort of older male demographic, with the exception in London, but certainly out in the other sort of grassroots venues around the UK, that traditional scene was very male-dominated. But it sounds weird, I almost forgot that I was a woman when I was there, because I guess the music's the priority, and the brilliant thing about music is the fact that it kind of doesn't discriminate on age, gender, race, all of those things. Instead, you're just there all with this common interest. So I almost don't notice, and I still don't really notice, that I'm often the only woman in the room or on stage. I mean, there's some wonderful female players in the UK, in the straight-ahead modern scene, you know, some really, really great ones, and I'm fortunate to play with them sometimes, but I'd say, yeah, that I'm definitely in the minority, and I'm cool with that, you know. I think, in fact, it's almost a unique selling point, isn't it? You know, I sort of, I don't want to say stand out, that sounds arrogant, but I'm perhaps remembered a little bit more because, oh, is that girl that plays the sax?
Yeah,
You know,
sure. I mean, I think of Karen Sharp and Sarah Spencer, and before your time, Kathy Stobart. You know, these were trailblazers. Well, I shouldn't say were because Sarah will yell at me since she's still blazing the trail.
Yeah.
And so is Karen. But it's nice to know that nobody said to you, young woman, what are you doing up here?
Yeah, I can't help often wondering whether there's maybe a bit of prejudice when I get up. For example, when I've been over in New York and I've been playing, I get up and I stand on stage, and a little bit of me is like, I wonder if they expect me to be rubbish. And I don't know whether that's me sort of a slight insecurity because of my gender and the fact I'm in the minority and stuff. But then I really enjoy trying to prove them wrong. I almost consider it like a challenge then to play extra well because I don't want to seem like the crap woman.
Yeah. I'm really a superhero with an alto. You know? That's nice. You are also on your website. It says saxophonist, composer, and educator. So tell me about the latter two.
Yeah, I mean, I do probably more arranging than composing actually, and composing something I'm trying to get into more of at the moment. But certainly, I enjoy writing for big band. I enjoy writing for my quartet as well. And I don't know, I think I spend so much time going out and about and driving all around the country and playing with lots of different people. There's something really nice about just sitting at my laptop with Sibelius opening and writing stuff down, and it's composition is improvisation slowed down and vice versa, and I really enjoy it for all the same reasons that I enjoy improvising. And in terms of education, I was really fortunate to have some fantastic teachers when I first started playing. I mean, my school, I have a lot to thank my school for actually, because they had a phenomenal music department, and they had two big bands. One of them run by a fantastic saxophonist called Kevin Did, and he got me into his big band when I first started playing the sax, having come from the flute, and gave me loads of opportunities, and I learnt a lot from doing that. And I think if my school hadn't have had that department, then I probably wouldn't have even got into music, to be honest. It would have certainly taken a different path. So now I really like to be able to give that back and hopefully give someone who was my age then the same experience and maybe inspire them to go into a career in music. In particular, I used to attend the National Youth Jazz Collective summer schools, which, having come from, you know, an area of rural Cheshire and, you know, gone out and played with people not of my generation, to suddenly go to a summer school where suddenly I found that there were loads of other people my age who were into the same music as me. That was a really inspiring thing. And since, I've been really lucky that NYJC's artistic director, Izzy Barrett, has invited me back as a tutor on several occasions to do NYJC summer schools. So it's sort of come around full circle, and that's really nice.
You realize that at some point, some person will be saying, I studied with Alex Clarke. Alex Clarke invited me up on the bandstand.
That's what I really hope. I mean, yeah, it should be passed, just as the music's always been passed down through the generations. I mean, perhaps I'm not quite old enough to be passing it to the next generation entirely, but, you know, one day, hopefully, yeah.
Yes, come back in 10 years. Let's just name that school that gave you such a good start, because I want the name to be part of this.
Yeah, absolutely. I went to the King's School in Macclesfield, and I was there from age 7 or 8, age 8 to age 18, like when I left sixth form. So I was there the whole way through, and the music department was very much the core of my existence at school.
Oh. Before we get into saxophone, are there arrangers you admire? Are there people who you've listened to on recording or in real life and said, wow, I have to steal something good from this one?
That's a good question, actually. I mean, I listen to a lot of Jeff Hamilton's trio, and I really like his arranging style and sort of the wittiness of taking a standard and then kind of pulling it apart, and because he's a drummer, the way he leaves space within his arranging, and there's a strong emphasis on changing grooves and feel. And I really like how that ensemble plays as well. So that arranging style influences me a lot. And then also there's a great saxophonist called Corey Weeds from over in Vancouver. And in fact, I think he's been in New York last week.
He's got a record label called Cellar Live.
Yeah, that's right. And there's all sorts of great records on that label. Like there's a live album of Grant Stewart and a lot of his own stuff. And he's done a couple of albums worth of arrangements and charts for a small and sort of a mini big band of his. And that's fantastic, the way that he's written for that, and again standards and sort of lesser known tunes and the way that all comes together. So yeah, it's an ever just like my playing. I think developing composition and arranging skills is there's a no ceiling goal on that as well, and I plan to do more as the year unfolds and thinking towards a new album and all that kind of thing as well.
Yes, I'm very pleased to be able to play some of that new album on the blog post. I was just very taken with Bye Bye Baby and Where or When in the way that you beautifully honored the melodies to start with and then got in there and moved your elbows all around and made the tune elastic and, very almost reverentially, but not stiffly. That you were having a good time exploring what could be done with that melody.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, Where or When that's sort of a classic case of how I enjoy reworking and arranging standards. I've moved through a couple of time signatures, through a couple of keys, and hopefully still managed to keep the integrity of the melody itself. Because I mean, it's a great melody, and I'm always mindful when I'm arranging kind of not to mess too much with the melody itself, because the composer's written that for a reason and it should be sort of treated with care, I think.
Richard Rodgers was annoyed by jazz improvisers, and somewhere along in his career, around 1940 or so, he writes something and the lyrics are, "I like to recognize the tune."
There you go. Point proven.
So it sounds also like there's no modulation or key change here. It sounds like you're part of a really vibrant scene of gigs and clubs and players in the UK. Is that true?
Absolutely. I think the UK scene's great. I mean, it's not to the scale of New York for sure, and it's been brilliant coming over here and just seeing the sheer volume and quality of musicians. But there's some fantastic players in the UK, and the scene down in London is great, sort of like a mini New York, and there's so many venues all across the country, right across all kind of genres and booking all sort of types of bands. And I really like the fact that, well, I mean, it's a double-edged sword. I like the fact that I have to drive to all my gigs actually around the country. I get to see the UK and I get to go to loads of places, and quite often I'll stop, go down early somewhere and check out the town and have a wander around. And yeah, I think the UK scene's brilliant, and I really enjoy working with all the people that I do, and I think I have my fingers in quite a few different pies, so get to see lots of different people as well. And I've got the sort of regular guys I work with, like my quartet and Clarke Tracy quintet, and then the big band things that I do sort of locally in Birmingham and then down in London. But then also the sort of provincial jazz clubs that might have me maybe once or twice a year, and I get to go and see those guys and we have a really nice time, and then I look forward to seeing them again 6 months later.
So you're actually one of these people who is making a living.
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing it. I think if I told 15-year-old me this, she might be slightly sort of amazed and surprised, because I don't know, I was kind of expecting to have to diversify more within my career. I was expecting to not have to do more teaching, that's the wrong way of doing it, because I do enjoy teaching, but I was expecting the ratio of playing to teaching and to writing and to doing all these different avenues of music to be a lot more balanced. But I'm really grateful that I'm like 80-90% playing, and that's always how I kind of dreamed of it to be. And I'm really pleased that that is the case. It might not be the case, you know what? Everything might dry up in 10 years' time and I'll do more teaching, and that's totally cool because I enjoy it. But right now, I'm like, yes, lots of playing. This suits me, it suits my lifestyle, and I'm just enjoying it whilst it lasts.
I looked on your website and there's a list of gigs in March, and this is great, you know, to not have those big empty spaces on your calendar.
Yeah, I mean, there's always that period, like, coming towards the end of the year where you look at your diary for January and you're like, how am I going to survive this month? And then things come in and the year sort of unfolds. And I'm really grateful. So with Clarke Tracy Quintet, we've got a new album out and we've got a fantastic tour of, like, Clarke's worked really hard getting dates. We've got like 25, 30 dates over the next sort of 2 or 3 months. So I'm out working loads with those guys, and proper old school tour, you know, traveling all around the country. And I think doing something consistently with one group of people and having that continuity, and every night we're gonna improve as a unit. You know, all that I've just said about traveling around and playing with various rhythm sections around the country and then doing lots of sort of dates scattered about is cool and it's fun. But I think old school, one band, on the road, it's going to be really, really fun. So I'm really looking forward to that, and I'm very grateful to Clarke for having worked so hard to get us all those dates. You know, it's not easy putting a tour together these days.
No, you have to have bookers and promoters and clubs and places to play that are willing to advertise you and sell tickets and so on and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's hard work trying to make all the stars align and trying to get the dates in a logical run, so you're not sort of, you know, at the north of the country one day and on the south coast the next day. Trying to make it all work and tie in as a logical tour, you know, it's logistically very difficult.
So, I gather that your main horns are the alto and the tenor?
Yeah, that's right. Probably more alto than tenor these days, but I go through phases of enjoying one more than the other. But yeah, I do play a bit of baritone every now and again, and occasionally soprano if it's required. But yeah, my main voice is on alto and tenor, and it always will be.
Tell me about that nasty instrument, the clarinet. Where does that fit in your playing life?
You know what? So I started life as a musician as a pianist originally when I was a kid, and then got a flute, and then moved to sax from flute. So I never did the clarinet and then move on to sax thing. I picked up the clarinet slightly later. So I've sort of resigned myself to, you know, there's not enough hours in the day to practice to get it to the same level as the sax. So I've resigned myself, it's never going to be as good as the sax. I find it really difficult, I'm going to be honest. You know, it's a tough instrument, and I can play it sort of well enough to get by in a New Orleans setting, and I can play it well enough to get by in a big band, and I'm satisfied with that. I think I'd rather focus my energies on improving as a sax player, because that's my thing. And, you know, just listen to Ken Poplawski and all those great guys, Buddy DeFranco, Eddie Daniels, and, you know, appreciate how masterful they are, and not even worry about trying to get to their level on the clarinet. I'm cool with that.
You said also that your alto heroes were, among others, Phil Woods and Cannonball Adderley. What moves you in their playing, do you think?
I think their sense of kind of momentum and buoyancy in their playing is a big thing for me. Like the way that Phil articulates, he's got sort of a very punchy, direct way of articulating and punctuating his playing. It never just feels like a stream of notes. There's so much inflection and personality in his playing, and that's something that I really try and emulate and sort of get the spirit of into my playing as well. And just their language, their time, you know, everything, all the good things. I'll never get tired of Phil and Cannonball, and, you know, other guys too, you know, Sonny Stitt, and more sort of recently, people like Vincent Herring as well, and just the spirit of their playing and the energy and the vibe, yeah.
I mean, at its best, music says to us, it's a good thing we got up this morning, and that sandwich I had for lunch was a very good one, and I'm happy to be here. That kind of energetic happiness in life.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what it's got to make you feel something, hasn't it? And for me, it's got to make me feel uplifted, and it's got to make me feel inspired to want to go out and do something. And, you know, I listen so much, you know, as I said before, I spend a lot of time in the car. And so I'm constantly listening to music, and I listen to music to make me feel good. You know, I've had a bad day, put on a record, it makes me feel better.
That's the way we've survived so long, I think.
Absolutely.
The embrace of music. So, what didn't I ask you?
I think we've talked about absolutely everything, haven't we?
Well, that compliments to you then. So I will stop this, and maybe we can get Alex to play something for us.
Oh, okay.
That would be lovely. So thank you.